Welcome. I'm Mary Long. My guest today is one of our favorite guests, Siri Strommen. She is the pastor of Atonement Lutheran Church in Bloomington, Minnesota. We have her on often. I love Siri. I love discussing things with her. Siri is a Lutheran pastor who is staying within the confines of traditional religion, but in a very non-traditional way, which I love. I do not follow any traditional religion anymore. So I like our discussions because we're both coming from two different places, but the goal is the same, which is to find a way of being spiritual in this world outside of the patriarchal, misogynistic ways we've been taught women are considered holy. I think that's how I kind of want to say it. So I actually wrote down some things. There's a lot that I want to cover, but it actually really all does come down to the basic message. What I wanted to talk about today was women's worth, how we feel about ourselves, what we're worth. Why is it so hard for us to ask for the money that we know that we're worth or that we deserve? Where does that come from? And there's a lot we're going to discuss, but this all ties in because I'm all for empowering slogans and these great songs and all that kind of stuff. But until we get to the very bottom of why it's so difficult for us to say, I absolutely deserve to be paid this money. I absolutely deserve to be paid as much as a man. The work that I'm putting in this world is very valuable. We have to uncover why that is so difficult for us as females, because it is particular to females. Men don't seem to have the same problem asking for what they're worth as women do. And I will go back to some of the things that I wrote down that I want to address that I think will help us get this discussion going and unraveling this, which is it does really come down to the religious message that it's holy to serve, and that bleeds into every area of our lives. So does the message that women are here to be nurturers, to be makers, to be gentle souls, to support those in power. That's a holy calling, to support these great men that do great things. And a really huge thing that happened that absolutely ties into this is in the past couple of weeks, we've got two big things that have to do with women and our value and our ability to be treated as intelligent beings who have thoughts and opinions that are worthy of being respected. One is Kate Cox in Texas. I'm sure you heard about this. She is pregnant with her third child, which she wanted desperately. And this child has one of those diseases that it will not be viable. The child will die in utero. If it doesn't, it will die right after it's born. And not only is Kate Cox's, the mother's life at risk, but the damage could be so severe that she'll never be able to have that third child that she wants, because in carrying and birthing this fetus, it could do great damage. She had to stand before a judge in a court to ask permission to make medical decisions for her own body, her own health, her own life. Very important. The other one is Brittany Watts in Ohio. Brittany's a 33-year-old Black woman, very important to note, who had a miscarriage in her toilet and is now being charged with abuse of a corpse. It's been found there was no damage to the fetus, but the fetus was not viable. I think she was, I don't know if her water was leaking or something, but she was miscarrying. It's definitely a miscarriage. But now she's in a court being accused of abuse of a corpse. And this is the slippery slope that we walk when we give away our power to men, because we're taught that this is what the God in the sky wants, and that we're holy women when we make the men in our lives our leaders and adhere to their judgments and rules and decisions about what it means to be female in this world and how to conduct ourselves. Think about that. We as women don't get to decide that. what it means to be female, whether or not we want to be a mother, what it means to be a spiritual being, who and what God is.
Mm-hmm.
Are deciding that for us.
Yep.
We need to pay attention because this bleeds into it. And please, whatever you do, don't get down on yourself because you went in to ask for a raise and you were certain this is what I'm going to ask for. And then you got in there and your knees knocked and you settled for way less. Or you keep taking shit at a job that doesn't treat you well and keeps asking too much of you and doesn't pay you enough. Yes, you are responsible for your own decisions. You're the one responsible for turning this tide. However, you're not alone. You've been programmed to be this way. I gotta take my glasses off because that keeps, I know, I keep forgetting that until I look back. I'm like, don't keep your glasses on because the light reflects. But we've been trained to behave this way. It's going to take a revolution of our own souls. It's going to take us holding on to each other's hands and saying, this is scary as hell, but we need to do this for ourselves, for our daughters, for those women that came before us, the suffragists, the women's libbers in the 60s, who really put themselves on the line and put up with so much abuse, starvation and beating, certainly for the suffragists.
Yeah.
We need to do this together. Now it's our turn. Now it's our turn. They did it when it was their turn. It's our turn now because this is what's happening and we have to stop living in the la-la land of that could never happen here. Well, we've been saying that for like 8 years and all these things keep happening. So let's stop saying that. Let's take a good look at why. Why do we feel like we're not as worthy? What causes us to be so afraid to say, I'm equal, I'm worthy, I deserve this? And money's always, it's very interesting the way religions have taught us that poverty is noble and holy. And
right.
You know, people barely have anything, but they're always at church and they're always helping their, you know, they really make it sound very attractive to be poor and struggling. In the meantime, these are huge corporations. The foundations of these major religions, these people live very well. I was born and raised Catholic, and I say this all the time. We own a city. We own invaluable artwork. We own a bank. The people that run our city, that is all run by men, they dress well. They dress in very flashy garments, very expensive clothing. They eat very well, and I'm sure women probably cook the meals for most of them. So let's really take a good look at how we've been trained to be good religious girls and how that not only damages us, but keeps the wheels of the patriarchy turning, keeps those in charge filling their pockets, crossing themselves at our expense. And what we talked about the last time, I think it was the last time you and I talked, Siri, we spoke about, sacrifice and suffering.
Yeah.
Sacrifice of the church. And what's really interesting, so I've been very blessed with amazing female friends in my life. I'm still friends with the girls and boys I grew up with on my block, still friends with the girls I went to high school with. So after that show, my girlfriend Nancy, who was a retired teacher, retired early, so this is what she wrote to me, and with her permission, I'm going to read it to you because it's pretty powerful, and I actually never really thought about this until she wrote it. I couldn't stop thinking about how we treat people in professions that are predominantly women, like teachers and nurses. Phrases like, it's not a job, it's a calling. And it's not for the money, it's for the kids. What a bunch of crap. Teachers and nurses aren't martyrs. They deserve to be compensated like other professionals with equal education. I hear women saying it just as much as men. True, we've been very good brainwashed little girls. We've all been conditioned to believe if you're a woman, you enjoy your job and you're helping others. That is part of your compensation. It's interesting that high school teachers make more than elementary teachers with the same level of education and experience. The only difference, there are way more male teachers in high schools. Yep. We all bought into it, although we shouldn't have. Until the pandemic, when people didn't care if we died, as long as their life wasn't disrupted. Now there is a huge shortage of both nurses and teachers. Many left both professions, and young people today aren't interested in jobs that demand so much and pay so little. They're smart. And, you know, Siri, I did share this with you after it came in, and you said something too about it, as a pastor.
Yeah.
Or like that you went through the same thing. If you want to share
Yeah.
your thoughts on
Yeah.
this.
Oh, I know it brought up so many thoughts when you shared that email with me. And I think it's so beautifully written, that when you are in any kind of, I'll put it this way. I noticed this a long time ago. If your job or career is to take care of human beings, you're automatically paid less than jobs that make money. And traditionally, women have either been relegated to or chosen jobs that work and take care of people, nurses, teachers, working with small children. And any job that seeks to care for or improve the life of a human being tends to be lower paid in all. I mean, you can literally make money, making money in the most abstract, bizarre bank, crazy tangential job that's pretty much made up and make tons and tons of money. And no one even knows what the heck you're doing. And then you're actually taking care of that person's elderly grandfather and you're paid poverty wages. So there's a lot there in that we as a society don't value humans, but I think it's tied up as well to women being drawn to those or relegated to those things. It's all intertwined. And so women working in these roles, if it's a woman predominated profession, it tends to be paid less because women weren't valued and women have embodied that lack of self-esteem to be able to ask for what they're worth. It's all related, right? It's all interconnected. And I, as a female pastor, and in the Lutheran Church, we don't have a lot, we don't have a lot of money. We're relatively new on the scene, and all the money comes right from the pews. And I've never worked for very wealthy congregations or people, and it's been hard for me to know what I should be okay with. And luckily there's some guidelines that are not gender-based, but I'm sure we could still find gender-based discrepancies if we looked hard enough. And yet when it comes to me setting prices for doing things outside of my job, for my retreats, for teaching a yoga class, for selling a CD, I always feel like I need to be humble and price low because I don't want anyone to think I'm taking advantage of them. And I've done a lot of work around that. I've really recently done a lot of work where I listen to the parts of me that are having trouble with making money, asking for something, with my sense of worth in general. And have really interviewed those parts and said, you know, what are you holding on to? What do you believe? What are you thinking about? And it's some pretty deep, powerful messages of not wanting people to think I am X, Y, and Z. You know, not wanting them to think I'm selfish, not wanting them to think I'm not spiritual, because these deeply embodied messages we have that there's something wrong with money, or wanting money, therefore, you know, you should be happy with next to nothing. And I've really been questioning those messages in my own life because they're not beneficial and they don't always make sense anyway. You know, they don't work. They're holding me back. And then I look at some guy who's a lot like me, say a musician who's also a pastor, and he's self-promoting and doing really well, and he has no qualms about promoting himself. I've noticed that for years, that there are people who are very similar to me in skill and profession, but as guys, they don't question whether they're worth being looked at and whether their product is worth being purchased or whatever it is. And yet I do. So it's complicated. It's not just one thing, but it's really worth us asking the question and beginning to unravel all of these little pieces inside of us and where they're coming from. Religion, parents, culture, and really investigating. And then I think it's important to find women who've kind of cracked through some of that. They've really plowed through and said, I don't care what you think of me. I'm going to do what is good. I'm going to do what's right. And I know my worth. And it's not selfish. That's the thing, is it's not greedy. We've seen greed. We see greed in the world. And it is a real, I'm going to do whatever I want at the expense of the earth, at the expense of water and animals and trees and human beings and entire countries. I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. That's not what we're talking about. A person who is a loving, kind person who has great gifts in the world, we actually want that person to be in a high position of leadership. We want that person to be making money because they're going to send it out in the world in a good and a beautiful way. We need more people who are the helping, healing people. We need more people who feel strong and can share their messages, share their worth, share their good things with the world without hiding, because that's the only way the world is going to change. Because the loudest voices right now are the voices that have never questioned whether they should or shouldn't talk, and they just do whatever the hell they want. And it's not to compete with them or be like them, but rather just to say, no, I am worthy. I do have something good to share, and I'm going to carve out a path, and I'm going to show the rest of the people the way it should be done,
Yeah. Well, you said some really powerful things there. A couple of things, one that you touched on, and I think this is important, that we're trained to believe that having money is somehow unholy or wrong, or and as I said, that's taught by people who are benefiting off of us buying into that. But we know it's BS, because anyone who has ever been broke, especially, I mean, I think the biggest poverty group in the United States is single mothers. I think I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
I think you're right
I
about
think it's
that.
single mothers. Ask any woman, any single mother, any human being, was life easier and better for you when you had enough money to pay your bills and didn't have to worry about the car breaking down or the furnace going or your kids getting sick? Or was it better for you when you were struggling and worried all the time, please God, don't let anything go wrong, I'm barely making it, right? Everybody knows life is easier when you have some money.
Yep.
The saying, money is the root of all evil. No, it's not. Greed is the root of all evil. Money's wonderful. Anyone who's ever not had it and then had it knows life is a lot easier when you have it. When you have it and your needs are taken care of, you can look up and you can say, oh, are there other people that need my help? What can I do for you? But when you're like this, like, oh, just freaked out all the time, your world gets very small. When your needs are taken care of and you have wiggle room in your finances, your world opens up. And I think a couple other things you hit on. First of all, there are people putting absolute poison in this world with their words, their thoughts, their creations, and they have no problem being millionaires, billionaires from it. They don't question it. But those of us, and I'm sure there's some men, but we're talking about females because it is a deeper, truer thing with females who want to share whatever gifts we have to do good. They're always like, oh God, I don't want to charge too much, because we're so intrinsically trained to be submissive and not be powerful. And money gives you power, it just does.
Yeah.
Because we're trained that way. But I think part of it also is just, if you're drawn to some kind of work that's service, whether it's teaching, nursing, healing, whatever it is, you're compassionate. That's your compassionate part. So you're like, God, I don't want to deny anybody this because they don't have the money. Especially if you've been someone who has gone through times in your life when you didn't have money. You're like, oh God, I know what that feels like. But there's ways around that. There's, I know there's a lot of people, because I've done a lot of different retreats and programs and different stuff where you can set up a sponsorship for people who can't afford or whatever. There's ways around that. But I think the most important thing is acknowledging that these feelings are real,
Yep.
not you. It's not that there's something wrong with you. This is our training. That's what we have to, this is what we have to talk about as women. We have to bring this out in the open and say, you're not a loser. You're not a freak because you don't know how to, you have been well trained to not ask for what you deserve and be a compliant, nice little girl who doesn't ask for much and just waits to be rewarded. Well, wait until you're in your grave because that doesn't happen often. So the most important thing, stop. We have to stop beating ourselves up for not being better, stronger, whatever. But not an excuse then to never change. We know we got to look at things. We got to look at what is causing us to be like this because it's universal. You know, my background is in radio, and I worked at a very well-known station here in Chicago, and it's actually known far and wide. And so we were able to get really accomplished guests on there. You know, when you're on a huge platform, everybody wants to be on your show because they want the publicity for their book or movie or show or whatever it is. And I am telling you, it was such an education because we all kind of think, well, if I was her, if I accomplished that, I would have such good self-esteem. I wouldn't have a problem asking for it. None of that's true. Women still struggle. You hear it from actresses all the time who do movies. They don't make as much as the guy made. So it's not really about what you've accomplished in life. We have to look at how we're being trained to believe what our worth is. That's the question. Because I was very religious, I always come back to religion because I do think religion it just bleeds into everything because most of us belong to some kind of religion that bleeds into, I think the religion dictated the society. And the fact that Christian nationalism is on the rise and people do want to turn our democracy into a theocracy. These are things that need to be discussed because this is where we're heading. This is where we already are, with women having to stand before judges to ask permission to take care of their own medical needs. So I don't want to belabor the point, but I want to really emphasize not to put yourself down or see it as just a you problem and there's something wrong with you. Let's reach out to each other. Let's start talking about this and let's talk about some solutions. What can we do? And the first one is when it comes up, recognize it, say, oh, this is my training. Of course, I don't feel I'm worth this because I've been trained to believe good girls don't ask for money. Good girls don't need money. Good girls aren't powerful. I think that's a very good place to start. I wrote down this quote here, Brene Brown. Sure, you've heard of her. Who doesn't love Brene Brown? She's a powerhouse. And this is the quote. My cousin actually just sent this to me this morning. Don't walk through the world looking for evidence you're not enough. You'll always find it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. Go.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And that's why they often say, you know, you spend the first half of your life looking outside of yourself for who you are. That's how we're trained because we're communal people. And so we internalize a lot of messages about who we are and what we're worth and what's going to make us lovable from our parents and the culture and our friends. And I think that's where a lot of midlife crises happen, is when those messages have been very narrow and harmful, is at some point your soul recognizes their bullcrap and it's not making you happy. And so the narrower the message was, I think the bigger the midlife crisis can be, where you basically, it's time. Your soul is saying it's time to question these, and it's time to live the life that we came here to live. One that is not defined by others or by the culture or by capitalism or by any of that. And if you listen to that voice inside of you and you allow yourself to go through the temporary pain of shedding old beliefs, what awaits for you is so much more freedom and just, oh, what a relief. And I feel bad for the people that don't have the support or aren't in a position where they can question that, because I think that those are the people who can sometimes get really bitter when they're older. But there's something that you said earlier I wanted to piggyback on too, just about money because I do think it's so important we talk about this as women. Yeah, because the quote is money is the root of all kinds of evil, and it often gets truncated to money's the root of all evil, which isn't true, but it's on the fact of what do you do with it. So about 9 months ago, I was challenged to do a meditation where I was to talk to money like it was a person. And I encourage anyone listening to do this as well. And very quickly in my journaling, as I invited that presence, this beautiful woman came to me dressed in green, and she introduced herself as Jade. And she said that she was the energy of money. And she was earth energy, just like food, just like sex, just like friendship and community. She was part of this world, part of what we need and use in this world to live. That's how we've created this entire planet, is giving and receiving. And at her purest form, she is a relational where you give and receive. You say, hey, I would like this. Okay. And it's an equal exchange relational where everybody leaves feeling better. Everybody leaves feeling complete. That was the energy she meant to be in this planet. And that energy got co-opted. It got robbed, hijacked, you might say, to be somebody's getting a little bit and someone's getting a lot. And this is an unsustainable, unhealthy loop. It's supposed to be equal. And so what she was really telling me was not only should I recognize that she is good, but she wants some redemption and she needs people, loving, good, kind people who have sort of the whole web of creation in mind to restore this identity and to return the giving and the receiving of money with gratitude and generosity and beautiful things, but it's not limited because she's so abundant. She's like, what is lacking in this world truly? It's only lacking, and we only have images of scarcity because we have so many people trying to control the process. That's why. And then they sell scarcity. So you have people barely making $15 an hour in an economy where that's poverty wages. They should be making $25, $30 an hour so that they can pay their rent, have some food, buy clothes for their kids, and have a little bit of money to go on a vacation every year. Every human being on the planet deserves that, period, hands down. Everyone deserves that. And so the story we have been told right now is that it is selfish to want to live. It is selfish to want to be able to pay your bills, and there's not enough. There's not enough. And it's a complete lie because of this great imbalance that's happened. So we need to start telling ourselves a new story, and we need to start questioning all of these narratives and saying, let's imagine together a planet in which all of this beautiful abundance is nurtured and cared for really, really well, and it's not robbed and harbored and taken from the earth. And let's imagine all people living and thriving, doing what they want, and everybody is giving and receiving generously and with gratitude, and that everyone's job is valued. And imagine the teacher and the nurse and the daycare provider as the highest earners in the country, the most respected, and the ones that are given the most money, because our value is truly on taking care of the vulnerable and the ones who need it the most. It's a completely different economy. It's a completely different way of doing things. And we deserve that world. I want that world. And the only way I can see to start to move toward that world is by acting as if I live in that world and behaving as such, so that I have gifts for that world. And I shine those gifts. I talk about those gifts. I receive compensation. I'm grateful for those gifts. I'm generous in how I return those gifts to the world. And I'm investing in the things that I want to see in that new world. And I lift up other women, and I lift up people who have those beautiful gifts. And so that's just my little thing. It just got me so excited to say, questioning those messages and saying the world we've been sold is a black and white, one-dimensional world that does not have to be at all the world that we live in. And the last thing I'll say about it too, and this is a total cop-out, why don't we live in that world? People will go, oh, because of human sin. Bullshit. That is a cop-out. That is a way to say there's nothing that can be done. We have the capability within ourselves to wake up to the story we've been sold. And I think you're right when you've said all along, women have to be the front runners in questioning the old story and dreaming and implementing the new world, a world of compassion and collaboration and justice and equality. Because if we don't, guys aren't going to do it.
That's it. Amen. You said a mouthful. That's my biggest goal, is I just want us to start asking questions. I don't have all the answers. You don't have all the answers. Nobody has the answers for us. We can share what we've learned, but your answers are right inside of you. And I want to say, you know, it sounded like you're describing this utopia, but it can be real. And I'll go to my grave believing this. It's on women to wake up, because as long as we have a humanity where one gender is dominant over another, we're never going to have the balance we need. It has to start with us waking up. It has to start with us asking questions about why we've accepted the roles that we've been trained to play. It has to start with women saying, I got you, sister. I know it's scary, right? But I'm going through it too. We're all going through it together. We are an unstoppable force. I do believe that the most powerful force on this planet, aside from the love that comes from the divine source, is women united together for a common cause. That's when things will change. I still believe in my religion that I was raised in, that I no longer practice, though I do absolutely love Jesus. I would love to have lunch with Jesus. I think he's an amazing, amazing, enlightened being. I have tremendous love and respect for him, for Buddha, all these other beings that came along that really were enlightened and showed us how to live. And the one thing Jesus said that I love the best is when he was standing before the Pharisees. And they were like, you should be afraid. We have so much power over you. And he said, you have only the power I give you. And that is the most powerful statement, because that is the truth. Once we connect with our own inner power, we're not going to let people push us around anymore. We're not going to say, oh, but I can't because they said I can't do this. I've had those moments. I wish I lived there. I'd be lying if I said I did, but I've visited that place where I'm like so certain and so connected in my inside. It's like, yeah, I'm not moving. I know this is my boundary. I have this respect for myself. And if I allow you to cross this, I'll lose respect for myself. I've been there. There's been times I haven't, and I've let that happen. The other thing, wait, there was one other thing that came up with that. Oh, the power of women. This is the thing. I am, even growing up, I grew up in a huge family, and it was very old time traditional, where the fathers were like the kings of the family. Everybody waited on them. In my house, you couldn't eat the last of anything because dad might want it.
Oh,
I was out on my own, in my own place. I don't know for how long. And I would always throw out the last piece of cheese because it went moldy, or the last cupcake or whatever it was. And then all of a sudden I went, I don't have to save the last anymore. I live here. This is my house. I can eat the last if I want. But that's kind of how we were trained to believe. And once again, I just kind of went off on my side thing. Oh, with women. Okay. So, this is what I always think about in my religion. So it came out, I don't know how many decades ago now, that priests were sexually abusing children for quite a long time, and they were doing nothing about it except moving these. When they got caught, they'd move them to another parish to abuse more children. Yeah. We are so well trained to be compliant women. Barely some of the people who had been abused that are now adults got together, they sued, they got money. But for the most part, not a lot changed. Now imagine if we had said, if we had been trained that we are worthy human beings and aren't here to serve and accept whatever shit anybody wants to hand us, if women had said, yeah, we're done. You're going to sexually assault our children and you think we're going to keep supporting your church and doing your laundry and paying their tuition and putting money in that basket, we're done. This religion needs an overhaul. And you're not getting our support until you do something. Make those priests accountable. Pay these people, pay them for their therapy, pay them for their pain and suffering, sell some of your billions of dollars in artifacts to do it. You make this right, and then we'll start from scratch. And we're going to be 50% of the voices here. We're going to rebuild this church in a way that really serves the people, and children are no longer prey for these pedophile priests. Imagine if we had enough inside of us to do that. Yep. What it would look like, The other thing is, in my church, they came right out and said, and this Pope Francis, he is more progressive, but he's still in the Catholic Church. He's still a Pope. And he flat out said a few years ago, women will never serve in the same capacity as men. Now imagine if we said, oh, you're not going to see us as equal? You don't think we're holy enough to serve in the same capacity as men? We're not going to do your laundry. We're not going to send our kids to your schools. We're not going to pay tuition. We're not going to imagine if, but we're so well trained to just accept, and that there's a God in the sky that wants this. What a racket. What a racket. So this is why I keep saying, don't get down on yourself. Pay attention, be aware, start asking questions. But this isn't about you because you're some kind of loser. We're so well trained. We let them abuse our children. And this is not this Catholic Church. This happens in a lot of churches, especially these strict evangelicals that are, that's coming out to all these, the family, whatever that really strict evangelical church is. I don't know what it is, but the head of that church is abusing kids. This is a pretty widespread thing. Imagine if we said, we're going to remove our energy and support from all these institutions that abuse our children, treat us like we're second-class citizens, make us serve, make us cover ourselves and not show any of our feminine sexuality because we don't want to tempt the men because then we're whores. Imagine we can get there, but we have to get there together. And we have to hold each other's hand and say, yep, it's scary. And most of the men, there are men that will support it, but the men that are really benefiting from us living this way won't support it. That'll be okay, because remember the words, they have only the power we give them. Let's not give them that power.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had, when we were at Mount Shasta over a year ago, which is where we met at that retreat, I had this pretty powerful insight. See if I can possibly articulate it. But the insight was, both men and women are broken in this system, right? Both of us are broken in different ways. But yet, because of the way that men are broken, they don't know how to fix that. And so it really does have to be when women heal and find their power and strength, then they can be that soft resting place for men to finally fall into their healing. And so we kind of lead the way.
Oh, I love that. Say that again.
When women heal and grow into our power, we can be that safe resting place for men to fall into their healing. And so that was just the vision that I had. And obviously it's not going to be that way 100% of the time, but for us to do that work and to take that upon ourselves, because healing comes hand in hand with questioning the narrative that hurts, the narrative that's breaking us, the narrative that's keeping us bound. So the more we question that and free our minds and free what's going on inside from that, the more healing we find, the more we become who God made us to be in the very first place. And that's such a beautiful, beautiful experience that inspires other people. And I think that inspires men too. I'll say one thing that's interesting. There was I think Brene Brown even talked about this. she talked about how vulnerability is so important and in healing. And she was approached by a man who was a husband and a father. And he said, you don't understand. When men try to be vulnerable, their women don't want it. They don't want it. They don't see it as strong because women have internalized not only their own oppression, but they've internalized what men have to be too. We've both internalized the boxes we're supposed to be in. And so women can make fun of men for being too emotional or to this or to that, as well as embodying their own oppression. And so I think it'd be so beautiful for in the process of our healing, we start to give permission for men to be more than just their, I'm strong, hey dude, yeah. I'm so glad I'm
Wow,
not a
you
guy.
looked really manly when you did that, Siri.
That would be so exhausting. Hey man, hey dude, yeah. That'd be so exhausting all the time just to not have feelings and to feel like those had to be so small. And to then we raise our boys different too, right? When we heal, we can raise our boys different. And anyway, I mean, it just,
No,
there's,
I understand exactly what you're saying. I think that definitely across the board. I do, people always think because I'm pro-woman, I'm anti-man. I am not. I love men, been married to men, raised a man. I do love men. I don't hate men. That's kind of just the thing they use to dismiss what we're saying. We need to relook at the roles we've been assigned and accept the fact that these roles have evolved out of people promoting fear within us because they want power and control over us. That's really the bottom line. One thing I really do want to address is that I noticed, this is what I started talking about before I go off on the, when I said about how I was raised, is how much women do in our own small little families, in our communities, in our societies, cities, our contributions that we don't give ourselves credit for. And I think especially now at Christmas time, I think it's a very pertinent thing to discuss because so many people are, oh, I love Christmas. I love Christmas. Everybody loves Christmas. A lot of people love Christmas. I wouldn't say it's painful for some people. I will say that. But so many of the things we love, the baking, the decorations, the beautifully wrapped presents, the gatherings, the food, that's all female propelled. We're doing all of this. And a lot of us doing it while working full time and raising children and going to their concerts and doing all this, still putting up the tree, making sure all the gifts are, all this wonderful stuff that we don't give ourselves credit for. And that, I think, is one of women's most fatal flaws, is all the contributions we do make, we don't even acknowledge them. We don't even look at them, which is one of the reasons, too, that on my website, I have all these accomplishments that women have done and are doing, because we don't give ourselves credit for anything. This beautiful holiday season that we all love, that's pretty much women behind that. The majority of women, of course, men contribute. I'm not hating men. Say that once again, but boy, we do that. We put the love, we put the spirit. I even think of things, we have so much power. And I think one of the greatest tricks, who's ever trying to keep us down is having us completely oblivious to how much power we have. Because boy, if we ever realize it and join together, things will really start to change. We have so much financial power. We may not make as much as men do, but we make a lot of the decisions about where that money's spent. I don't know if this is still true, but I remember when I was in radio 10, 15 years ago, that I think they said 80% of purchasing decisions are made by females. That's a lot. I always think of the Beatles. Beatles, like, some may disagree, they'd be wrong, but the Beatles, like, greatest band ever, changed so much. Really, when you think about that, if you take away all the female involvement, all the screaming girls, all they call it hysteria. I'll call it passion.
Yeah.
Who was buying those records? Who was going to those concerts? Who raised all that energy to such a hyper amazing place? That was female energy being put into that. Taylor Swift just was on what did she make? Like $1 billion or something. It's like the highest grossing. God bless her. I know some people have some issues with some of the people she hired or something. It has to do with maybe some people are racist or something. So I don't want to speak to that, but I will say I saw her documentary. I saw that girl stand up. She's a young girl standing up to people in the last election that were telling her, don't say who you're going to vote for, because that takes a lot of courage for a young woman whose career is on the line to say, no, this is important. I'm going to speak of it. She also in this tour gave $100,000 to every trucker.
Every single person. Yeah.
Yeah. I've not heard of any male musicians doing that. So props to her, but that's female driven. These Swift gay men too. Gay men love.
Yeah.
But it's the female energy, the purchasing decisions, everything. I remember my mom telling me years ago when something was happening, I can't remember what it was, but it was something that was not good. And she said, what's happened is the women no longer are gathering like at the PTA or whatever, because they're busy now. They're working now. Yeah. So because women lost that place where they united and decided, now it's kind of been taken over by people who have money and are incredibly religious that are kind of driving where this train is going because they have the time and money to do it, and everyone else is just trying to keep a roof over their head and food on their tables. But I just use that as an example. We are incredibly powerful. We haven't begun to tap into the power we have when we start questioning our own doubts and fears about our worth and saying, is this true, or was I just trained to believe this? And boy, if you do nothing else, start spending some quiet time alone. Don't look for your answers of who and what God is in these institutions. Try just sitting by yourself, even if it's 10 minutes of just quiet, and just start seeing what comes up outside of what you've been trained to believe is true. Know your worth. And the only way to do that, it's going to come up from inside of you. It's not going to come from singing these great songs and reciting all this stuff. That stuff may help. But I know for myself, and I'm a work in progress, but the only true change that's really happened that I can feel solid ground under my feet comes from inside me when I'm quiet and really listening to and trusting what's rising within me. And I can tell you what's within me, whatever that spirit is, does not want me suffering and sacrificing and playing small. Because when we do that, all these people with the big mouths that say horrible things, and I mean, I think of this guy who just spewed conspiracy theories and hate and said that what was that horrible massacre of all those little children in
I know.
Sandy Hook.
Sandy
Hook, who said that that's all staged and didn't really happen. Imagine being a parent listening to that as you have this giant hole in your heart where your child used to be, this guy's making millions of dollars. He has no problem doing that. Thinks he deserves it, thinks he's worth it. So the next time you want to question whether or not what you have to say
think of him
monetary value, we need to put that in the world, what's coming from our hearts, because we want something to balance and hopefully eventually overtake all that darkness and hatred.
Yeah. Can I just end by sharing another Mount Shasta story? And you're going to remember this. You were there. We were down by the lake having this beautiful little meditation that our leader, Lisa, was leading. And like, she literally just started the meditation and I started sobbing. I just buckled over. I sobbed the entire time and everyone was like, okay, there you go. And what was going on was we're sitting there and all of a sudden I look over and in my mind's eye, my grandmother who's passed was there with her little sweatshirt and she just started laughing. And I was sort of surprised. And then all of a sudden there was like this, all of these other figures of like all of the women who came before her in my ancestry. And they were all there and they didn't say anything, but I just got the feeling it was like, you doing this, you being here with women and taking the time to connect with your soul and to connect with spirit in your way, you healing is what we've been waiting for. It was
Mm.
like all these generations of women who didn't have the education, who didn't have the freedom, who had to suffer and endure and could not choose even half of what I've been able to do in this lifetime. I've been able to go to college. I've been able to go to seminary. I'm a pastor. I'm a musician. I'm a writer. I, everything that I want to do, I'm slowly finding a way to do it. And I'm a mom and a wife at the same time. I was able to get divorced from a bad marriage. What I've been able to do in this lifetime is what some of these women only dreamt was possible. And they were all there like, go, go, go. Don't stop now. Don't belittle yourself. Don't, keep going. And then to like put the cherry on the cake, cherry on top, my mom, who's still living, and then my daughter showed up. And it
Mm.
made me realize that the work I'm doing now isn't just affecting me, all the women behind me, but every woman coming forward from me. And it didn't feel like a weight. It felt like cheerleading, like you do this, you be everything you can be in this lifetime, because you have no idea the ripples that are going out just by you living the life that you were meant to live. And that I still have to remember that every once in a while, because when I remember all those women cheering me on, I'm like, who am I to pretend I don't have anything to say?
Amen, sister. And it's important that you bring that up, because I absolutely do believe, and there is quite a bit of testimony to affirm that, excuse me, those that have come before us, that have passed, crossed the veil, whatever, we're still very much connected to them. That this theory that we are all one isn't just an airy fairy, quantum physics, string theory, all that is kind of scientifically being proven. We are all one. We don't end. Everything continues. So appreciate so much what you just said. I want to close with just saying it is the holiday season. I want to say thank you to the women who came before me, the women who are still here, and all of us that make this so beautiful for everyone, for the children, for neighbors, friends, the elderly, all the things we do from our heart to make things brighter, to make things more festive, to spread this love. And please give yourself credit for that. Please give yourself credit for that. You are doing this. You need to say, wow, all this beauty. Yes. When people say thank you, take it in and say,
Yep.
you're welcome. Yes, I did this with love. And I'm so glad that you appreciate it and that
Yep.
you thought to thank me for that. And you don't have to carry everything on your shoulders. If you have kids that Santa doesn't come for anymore, have them wrap each other's presents.
Mm-hmm.
Think of different ways. Get two girlfriends and say, I'll bake 10 dozen of this cookie. You bake 10 dozen of this cookie. You bake 10 dozen of this cookie. We only have to make one kind of cookie and we'll all have 3 different kinds of cookies. Think of ways like you can make it easier on yourself, or don't make any cookies at all. Go buy some.
Yep.
Tell somebody else to make them. You don't have to be the sole responsibility for everyone having a perfect Christmas, which doesn't exist anyway.
Yep.
But whatever you do, give yourself credit. Say, I did this. That's the first step, because boy, do we love to criticize ourselves. Do you ever look in the mirror and say something really kind to yourself? That's rare, right? But we look in the mirror and say the shittiest things to ourselves. Let's stop that. Let's make that our New Year's resolution, that we're going to at least be aware of it and try and catch ourselves when we say mean things to ourselves, but also take in and say, I did this. Look what I did for my family. I made this beautiful holiday. Look what I did for my neighbor that couldn't get out. And I did something kind of nice for them, or this other person at school, or this teacher who's alone, whatever it is. Give
Mhm.
yourself credit for that kindness, because that's how we start stoking the fires of
Yep.
our own self-esteem.
Yep.
And that's exactly what we need, is to raise that fire within us.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, well, wishing everyone a very Merry Christmas, Siri. We won't see you till the new year. Please tell people where they can see more of your work.
YouTube channel, Siri Strommen. I've got teachings on there. Otherwise, siristrommen.com is my website where you can see all my offerings as well.
Okay. Thanks so much, Siri. As always, it's been wonderful speaking with you, and I look forward to seeing you in the new year.
You too. You too.
Take care.